You very much indeed for that, Jan Lessie, one of the directors of a World Football Summit. Yes, we are back. Welcome to our second edition of WFS Live. You might remember we had our first virtual event in July. Well, it's great to be back with you. My name is David Garrido. I am a presenter for Sky Sports in the UK. I'm also the event MC for World Football Summit, and it is truly wonderful to be part of this fantastic team once again. So over the next 5 days, we have almost 50 sessions for you, bringing together the football industry's most influential community. And as you'll know, the overarching theme for this week is building football's roadmap for the future. And as we continue to fight against coronavirus and the effect that it has on vulnerable communities, well, 2020 has also been the year where we have stood up to other challenges, notably racial discrimination and social injustice. At WFS, we truly believe that we need to evolve towards a fairer, more modern, more progressive, more supportive industry. As we've described it, the football we want, the game we need. And we also want this to be a truly interactive, truly involved, truly digital conference. So please do ask questions to be posed to our guests. Please do vote on our polls, and please do enjoy making this your event as much as we enjoy putting it on for you. Just a few other parish notices, a bit of housekeeping for you. For any journalists present, newswires in English, Spanish and Arabic will be posted in the newsroom by Efe. We'll also have daily press releases with the main take-homes from the most relevant panels in the Media Vault. Video highlights of each panel will be uploaded on a Google Drive that will be shared with the media as well. On top of that, we are working with our new media partners, SNTV, who will distribute highlights from the most relevant panels to their clients globally. You can watch back anything that you've missed here on this Swapcard platform 24 hours after it was originally broadcast. And in fact, your friends can do so too via Live Now Global, which is available on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram and LinkedIn. And after that, in any case, it will be uploaded to our YouTube channel in the weeks to come. We also have our expo area. There are some fantastic exhibitors out there for you to find out about. And speaking of social media, please do spread the word about what we're doing this week. The hashtag is WFS Live. We are at WF Summit on Twitter. We are at World Football Summit on Instagram. And finally, we are running a very tight schedule this week. So please, moderators and speakers, be as concise as you possibly can with your questions and your answers. I'm sure that they will be very, very insightful indeed. So I think that's pretty much everything as far as preamble and housekeeping is concerned. So without further ado, I think it's about time that we kicked off this second edition of WFS Live. Thank you so much for your continued attendance and attention. Our first roundtable of the day on day one is entitled Reimagining the Football Industry, How to Embed Purpose in the Fabric of Football, brought to you in collaboration with Common Goal. Now, one thing is for sure, this year, and especially the hiatus imposed by the coronavirus pandemic, has allowed us all to reflect on what we do and how we do it in the world of football. Maybe we reassess our priorities, maybe we revise how we operate going forward. I think we've all been able to really appreciate what matters in life. And maybe 2020 is the year that we can start pushing the football industry in a new direction. Rhetorical question here. Is profit the be-all and end-all? Does it have to be? Is it maybe the time to put social well-being and maybe environmental sustainability at the heart of our businesses? Who are the beacon examples who are already doing just that? It'll be interesting to know what our speakers use as a definition for purpose in the title of this roundtable. It'd be fascinating to hear their thoughts and opinions. As you can see, they're waiting here patiently. And they are as follows: the CEO at Olympique Marseille, Jacques-Henri Eyraud, a founding partner of Muse Capital, Assia Grazioli-Venier, who's also on the board of directors at Juventus, co-founder at Common Goal, Jürgen Griesbeck, and your moderator for the session, the global chair at Deloitte, Sharon Thorne. Sharon, welcome along. Thank you very much indeed for doing the honours for this first panel of WFS Live and kicking us off. Over to you.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, David. And hello, everyone. Thank you for joining. I'm absolutely delighted to be here. And special thanks to our fantastic panelists, Assia, Jacques-Henri, and Jürgen. And I'm really sorry that we can't all be together in person. Now, purpose is a topic that is very close to my heart, and I've been inspired by the amazing things that Jürgen has achieved through Street Football World and Common Goal. As Deloitte's Global Chair, I spend a good deal of my time working to drive collective action around important issues such as inclusion, social progress, and climate. And I'm also a huge Manchester United fan, so I'm delighted to bring these two passions together. It's certainly true that the role and expectations of business are changing rapidly and dramatically. And I've seen a huge shift during my career, especially in the last 3 to 5 years. And of course, this has been further accelerated and intensified by COVID. Looking to the future, we know that few things will be the same as before. Organizations and societies must learn from the crisis and implement changes that enhance our collective resilience. And this is true for sport as well. Purpose is the critical thread that ties an organization together. Now, unlike sport, it unites people under a common set of shared values. Sport also ignites passion, and passion that I believe can be harnessed and put to work on some of the world's most challenging problems: climate, inclusion, poverty, access to education, among others. So today we're going to explore the idea of moving from the pursuit of profit, as David referred to the pursuit of social well-being and environmental sustainability, without causing detriment to the sporting spectacle that is football. And the idea of embedding purpose into the fabric and culture of football to bring about lasting change through the superpower of 4 billion football fans. So my first question to the panel: the year 2020 has surfaced weaknesses and vulnerabilities of the current system. The COVID-19 pandemic, the ongoing climate crisis, the Black Lives Matter, all just some examples of global challenges that demand new ways of thinking and operating for all stakeholders in society. So looking more specifically at the football industry, my first question, Assia, to you first, and then Jacques-Henri: how do you experience the current climate within the football industry, and how does it affect the way you interpret your own role? Assia. I think Assia frozen. Jacques-Henri, do you want to kick off?
Yes, Sharon. Under normal circumstances, I live in a city, Marseille, where there is a direct correlation between our team losing games on Sunday nights and the number of post-traumatic stress disorders during the night and until Monday morning. So imagine what goes on right now with this pandemic and all the problems that are related to the current crisis. And, to your question, I think this crisis totally changed me and the way I feel about my role as the CEO of this important club in France. And let me tell you why. We really tried to tackle this sense of urgency that was out there in society around two things. One was food, eating, and we saw a rise in the number of people who were not able to eat, as amazing as it can sound. And so we put together all of our infrastructures so that, working with associations like Les Restos du Cœur in France or the Food Bank, we gave food to the underprivileged and those who were suffering the most. But the one thing which really changed me was when we decided, once our academy was cleared of our young players, to host 50 women and their children who were victims of domestic violence. And the kind of stories I witnessed, the kind of stories that were shared with me, totally changed the way I saw my role. And that was, heartbreaking. And this is where we decided to step up our game and really do much more, not only through our foundation, which existed for quite some time, but also to put impact as the center of really everything we do now. And so that I would say, and again, it's hard to say in a club like Marseille where tens of thousands of fans expect us to win on the pitch, first and foremost. Well, I see our responsibility outside the pitch as important as our desire and willingness to win on the pitch. And this is something that we're going to apply now to everything we do, above and beyond our foundation, because it is our responsibility And this is why, this pandemic really changed me.
That's a great response. Thank you so much for sharing it, Jacques-Henri. Very, very powerful. And to see that you've so clearly positioned this and saying, winning on the pitch is critical, but so is everything else and our responsibility. It's phenomenal to hear. Thank you for taking the lead. I still don't think, unfortunately, that we've got a connection to Assia. There had been thunderstorms in her area. So, Jürgen, if we can just sort of develop it slightly, will 2020, as we have seen in many areas in society, affect the way forward for the football industry? Mark a before and after, and if so, how, with your experience?
Thanks, Sharon, and thanks also Jacques-Henri for this in initial words, because I think they are very reflective of so many of us who have somehow lived through a similar experience, and this obviously doesn't exclude the football world. I think in addition, in terms of before and after, it's probably the first time, and the two of you, Assia and Jacques-Henri, please correct me if you feel differently, but I think it's the first time in recent history, in the recent football industry's history, that there is a sense of vulnerability and a lack of resilience, and really like a need and a necessity to rethink the whole approach of the industry to this social phenomenon, football, which it has built its economic success upon. In terms of what I also relate massively with is you saying the focus on the pitch, and now the increasing parallel focus, or a core of what that means in a daily life, is the focus on off the pitch performance. I think this is where actually in addition to the sporting success, obviously fans is where also the fans will increase the level of relationship they actually have with the club, and it will extend. It's going beyond looking at the fans as paying customers of a product, but actually looking as fans, feeling increasingly as global citizens with their own role, and if the club has the chance to actually go beyond the identity, you give people the tribe, the feeling of tribe. You can give people with the on the pitch performance and trophies and championships, and go beyond that and be relevant to people in their everyday life. I think that will just increase the importance of the clubs in their respective communities. And I don't think that the response actually can be the repackaging or even the digitalization of the product. And have the customers just, instead of paying for what football has been, to pay for another version of the product. But it's actually about the environment that football can affect by embedding purpose at its core. And just in addition to that, football and anything for that matter will not succeed if the industry continues to focus on the problems of the industry, but actually instead embrace its huge potential of being part of the solution. And I think that has become very evident during the COVID-19 crisis. Maybe I leave it here for the moment, and I don't know if Assia is back. For her, it's not only thunderstorm, but also 4 a.m.
It's very unfortunate, but I don't think we have Assia back yet. Thank you, Jürgen, for those additional comments and supporting what Jacques-Henri says. And I know that you've been doing an enormous amount in your various organizations for a long time to embed purpose. And I think hopefully we will see that the rest of the football world is looking to catch up. So just coming on to the second question. The year 2020 has shown, a really strong need to play together as a team. And this is something that's being praised, embraced and promoted across society by a number of stakeholders and in a number of sectors. But, to Jacques-Henri, if you could kick off first, isn't this the essence of football as a team game?
Well, Sharon, of course it is. Playing, as a team, acting collectively is definitely the essence of football. But it leads to another question for me is how do you maximize impact on society through a collective effort? And of course, clubs do that. And Sharon, you said you were a big fan of Manchester United, and I know for a fact that Man United does an enormous amount of community outreach and work. But look at what happened with Marcus Rashford. How one individual, one player, changed the game and forced his government to invest. What, 400 million pounds for the cause of underprivileged kids and their right to eat during holidays. So my challenge, or the challenge that we are facing now, is towards players. How do we convince that there is no, as far as clubs are concerned, hidden agendas, that we're not trying to manipulate them, but that we expect more from them, and we believe they have a role to play. And that cannot be a top-down approach. That cannot be, for me at least, a club or a CEO or an owner giving a big speech to players saying, hey, you should get involved and you should commit to this cause. First of all, players have their own agenda, and rightly so. And they should be able to develop their own series of initiatives, given what they believe, deep in the hearts of what is right for them. But I also think, and certainly this is the case in France, and for me it's very interesting that a lot of football players suffer from some form of self-censorship. They believe they're not legitimate to engage in impact action. They believe this is not their role because we taught them that they were a football player and that we expected them to deliver on the pitch what they were expected to do. Well, I think times are changing. And I think we should work a lot with players, and Jürgen has been doing it for so many years in such a successful way. But as club owners, as clubs' senior managers, we should engage in a very profound, very thoughtful discussion with players, asking them to realize how strong their impact is on society. And I think it boils down to the gap, the discrepancy between our political elites and these players. Elites, politically speaking, love to be photographed with players, but they don't value them. I don't believe they respect them. I don't believe they really want to, think about some long-term projects with players. And this is kind of the mindset we need to change. And this is kind of the discussion we need to start with players, letting them, the opportunity to imagine, to think about where they believe they should, commit or be engaged. This is, I think, a profound undertaking, a very important undertaking that should be one of the post-COVID world decisions as clubs we should make. And certainly at Olympique de Marseille, we expect to have these discussions, and again, to change our way of thinking about this, and to change the way players think about their social responsibility.
That's really interesting analysis, Jacques-Henri. And the Marcus Rashford example is a very current one, as you said, and the impact he has had has been absolutely phenomenal. And he has captured the imaginations of the UK population, and I'm sure around the world. But it has driven change. But your comment about whether political elites really engage is an interesting one, and something that we will obviously have to, clubs will need to keep progressing. But there are lots of great examples, and Jürgen, it'd be really good for you to sort of to come in now, because it's something you've been working on very hard for some time, and there are many footballers who are doing fantastic things, working with you and others.
Yeah, totally. I was remembering, like, in many occasions when we speak from a common goal perspective with professional athletes, both male and female, what we hear is that there is a huge appetite and hunger to actually get on, we may call it a purpose journey, because it's not just about like feeling disenfranchised as a player or not allowed to actually have an opinion, but it's also that there hasn't been a consistent education for the players, or a consistent accompanying of the players throughout their growing up in football that would allow them to actually get to the core of what their purpose is about, to understand what their purpose is, and as a consequence get on a journey to unlock that passion and actually marry your professional football career with, if you want, your purpose career. I think that's very important. And back to Jacques-Henri, when he was speaking about, okay, we as a club and them as a player, I think it's a lot about an enabling environment to actually facilitate this awakening or this courage also to dig for your purpose and then develop it throughout your footballer's career. Currently, I think it's still like Marcus Rashford is obviously a different example, but what we also have seen, like with Common Goal, is that there's this awakening happened like in the current footballers generation, closer to the end of the career. And now what you can see with the young athletes actually also representing a whole new generation. This is now shifting, and I think COVID, if anything positive, I think it has shown us that we're globally interconnected, and that we all have a role to play when it comes to a solution that is actually capable to solve the challenges of our times. But when I say interconnected, what I mean is actually together. Interconnected is one thing, but what we now need to do, I guess, is the step towards togetherness, and actually understand what's the role of all of us to play individually towards a collective goal set and objective. What we at Common Goal like to say is that, and that's back to your question, Sharon, isn't it the essence of football when we talk about team game? Yes, it is, but so is social change, we would say. So we all know that a team performs best if there is a collective vision in place, if there's a collective objective, and obviously then strategy, tactics follow. But each team member actually is aware of his and her specific contribution to the collective success. And I think this is what we as a global society, and also what football as an industry, need to understand if we really want to strive towards a sustainable future, I guess. And this is also like talking again about the essence of football. I think it hasn't been worked out yet. Maybe now is actually the time for football actually to accept that it can play a leading role, and not just because it's the right thing to do, but it's actually a smart thing to do, and move from more of a charity and giving away, giving back perspective on contribution to more of a DNA perspective of contribution and actually being part of the solution. So I think the moment is right. We're heading towards a decade of action, and football is as close as it can to become an enabling force towards achieving actually what we have set ourselves as global goals.
No, thank you, Jürgen. I think you've made some excellent points there. The point about footballers finding their purpose, I think, is a really important one, and your point about the education and support that's needed to enable them, but also football clubs being clear on theirs and how they all work together, and then the wider football community. But just developing some of what you were saying into our next question, football is one of the few cultural phenomena that reaches every single corner of the world. It has incredible impact. It's the sport with the biggest reach, and it has huge financial resources. A lot has been done, but is football playing at the level of its resources and influence? So if I can just come to you first, Jürgen, why has football not yet embraced its own potential to contribute to people and the planet?
It's a good question. And we've been working now like for over 20 years when it comes to unlocking football's potential to transform communities. And when we got closer, like to 2016, 2017, and we could follow the success story, like the economic success story of the football industry, we became increasingly aware that we had developed like totally in parallel, and that there was no real systemic link between football that puts like the maximization of profit first versus football that puts the maximization of impact first. Which was actually the reason to found Come and Go back then in 2017. So I think it's not too harsh to say that football has been living in a bubble of where it didn't have to question itself too much, because despite a financial crisis, despite crisis in reputation of some of the football's institutions, etc., it just has continued to grow. Mostly two-digit year on year. So I think what and I stated that at the very beginning when I was saying that like maybe COVID, not just like all of us, but actually also and as we're talking about the football industry, it has allowed to question ourselves and to get to the other end of it stronger with a better understanding of what we actually can, what is actually the role we can play, and I think that's just healthy. It's not. I'm not wanting to blame anybody, but I think it's just a healthy development, and it's still on time. As I mentioned before, we're moving into this decade of action, and if we actually commit collectively to that action, we still have the chance to offer to the next generation a world they can actually live in. And it's not like somebody else's next generation. It's our kids and our grandkids, maybe in some cases. So I think it has become the responsibility of our lifetime, and football can't be an exception. It actually could be a leader to be a driving force, an enabling force to make something happen. We haven't yet identified as maybe a missing capacity, a missing skill, if we wanna tackle these challenges. And I think it is just team play, collaboration, as simple as that. There's all the technologies out there, there's all the solutions out there, but sometimes what's missing is the willingness to work together in order to achieve it, and maybe compromise our own protagonism within that, and be happy with the outcome of the collective. So I think that's a very interesting and important moment in time. And if we get it right as football, we have a tremendous contribution to make.
I agree. I do think that the impact that football has, and as you say, probably has not embraced its potential, but with the resources that you have and the fans that you have, the potential to make a difference in the decade of action is just phenomenal. So Jacques-Henri, just building on this, is it possible to rethink football's purpose without causing detriment to the sporting spectacle and to its financial sustainability? Could purpose, even co-drive the next growth cycles of the game?
Yeah, I think definitely, Sharon. And, I think the initiatives up until this crisis were largely opportunistic. They were not strategic when it comes to impact. They were not long-term focused. And I think, if my feeling is that in this post-COVID world, soon to be post-COVID world, we're going to have to embed impact as a key part of any club strategy. And again, the era of a foundation that focuses on impact, I think is over. You will still need a foundation as a vehicle to raise financing, of course. But the fact of the matter is you will need a much more integrated strategy where impact has a very big place. And I think that impact and financial performance, Sharon, not only sustainability, but financial performance are certainly interconnected, and one should build upon the other. This can be achieved. Maybe we need more of the Jürgen Griesbecks of this world with us to help us out. But certainly, I believe it is fundamental. And back to my comment on foundation, Sharon, you're a very notorious consultant and high level consultant. It's like innovation. Okay, do you, within an organization, do you want to set up an innovation lab with people who are committed to developing innovation, or how do you transform your organization and make innovation something that is handled or tackled horizontally everywhere in your firm, everywhere in your organization? Well, that is the challenge that I believe we have in front of us. How do we put impact everywhere in the organization, and no longer deal with it as this one silo, under the umbrella of a foundation. And that's what we need to change. Certainly, we're going to do this at Olympique de Marseille. There are clubs that have already started in a very powerful, very compelling way. Let's face it, Sharon and Jürgen, football doesn't have a good image. Football is the universal sport. Football is, of course, the number one source of entertainment across the world. But let's face it, I don't think we have a great image, and we certainly need to improve it. And that should be very high on our agenda, on our list of priorities, and even more so after the lessons learned from this pandemic, and what as social agents we need to do in our world and in our societies.
Very, very powerful, and a very, I suppose, fair challenge to football. I think you've been extremely honest and appreciate it, Jacques-Henri, that football has perhaps not got the reputation you would want it to have in some areas. It has in other areas, and there are, icons, great people who are doing amazing things that we can reference, but equally, there are a number of things that we can reference where it could be better. And I think your analogy to, for someone like us, putting innovation throughout the organization, the thing for me at the moment is putting purpose throughout our organization too. Our purpose is to make an impact that matters for our clients, our people, and the communities that we live and work in. And we drive that through all of our operational decision making as well. And it's something that we train people on. And there are lots of very important initiatives that we have. And actually, just building slightly on this, and you referenced it earlier about the education of players. And I just wonder if you could comment on we've had a question from the floor, how can we educate players about their off-field responsibilities? And I think this plays into, how do you sort of drive this impact throughout the whole of football, throughout all of the teams? So I don't know if you've had any thoughts about that, either Jürgen or Jacques-Henri.
You want to go first, Jacques? All right.
No, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. There's actually a very interesting panel later this afternoon on this very specific topic. I think it's very interesting for those who have time to participate. I think it's around 5 around the role of the modern athlete, and I actually think it's not that much that the athletes wouldn't want to, as we mentioned, but I think it has been just such an imperative to actually not think about anything else beyond performing on the pitch, that it's just like people are not don't feel like in a position to, and maybe not even empowered to be part of that contribution part we're talking about that impact part. And then things happen like, okay, I'm asked to give back, so I found my foundation. Then there's a logic of founding your own foundation. It's very expensive, and it tends to fail actually in many cases if, as you as an individual, You hook up with people who are not necessarily prepared for that job, and then the day comes, you're not anymore a pro athlete and you're an ex-athlete, and you still have your foundation as then an obligation to continue, and something you actually don't want to shut down. So there is a whole spiral of things that tend to fail. And the example I just wanted to mention is, and Jacques-Henri, I'm sure you have also from OM examples to share, but FC Nordsjælland, as to just pick one of the clubs I'm really looking up to, they build on the concept of a better person is a better player, and that goes back to actually integrating a purpose curriculum in their academies, which is a very interesting model. It goes back to the Right to Dream Academy. So that's how I think it will need to happen, is just enable the need and the necessity of every human being to understand your own role in life. Let that happen in this environment where and let's passion marry purpose. And I think then it becomes really powerful. And if we just extend that to a club level, I think also like and the relation not only to the players but also to the fans, if you start to have a shared life project where your fans, your players, and the club as an institution, your employees come together to actually be invested in a similar thing, or actually at least in a similar belief, and feel encouraged to actually take on that responsibility as part of a team. I think this has just no limits in terms of what it can do to people and planet.
Thank you, Jürgen. Jacques-Henri, do you want to add anything?
Well, just maybe one decision we made, and something we're going to implement in a few months' time. But when you look at academies, because I think Jürgen is totally right, that's where the challenge is. The education of these players has to start as at an early age, right? And I believe, for one, that academies are often look like bunkers, right? You tend to isolate, you tend to overprotect your players because of many different reasons. And so, as part of our curriculum, what we're going to do is we're going to introduce sessions with people from the civil society, as we call it, lawyers, social entrepreneurs, journalists, people from a very different background as the sports background and the football background, to talk about their job, by the way, to talk about their mission in the world, and also the issues that they see that they're faced with in each of their own job or company or associations. And for us, it's going to be a way, and we'll test that. Maybe we will fail, but that's going to be a way to, open the chakras, of these young players, and maybe trigger some kind of willingness to be engaged in another area, very different from football, obviously. So we're going to try to sow these seeds through such encounters and discussion, and of course we're going to try to steer their appetite for impact in such a way, and we'll see what happens. But this is part of the decisions we made going forward that we will implement in this post-COVID world.
No, I think it's some fantastic ideas that you're sharing, and hopefully other people listening will be thinking about what they're doing in their academies and thinking about that, because you're right that there is a real bubble, and I think that it can be quite unhealthy. And the point you were making, Jürgen, as well, about being a better person makes a better player. And one of the things, there's quite a lot of evidence, if you look at companies where people, and it links back to purpose, where they feel that what they are doing is valued and that there's a reason to it and that there's a wider societal benefit, actually has a big impact on people. And I know there's this focus on they should just be focusing on how they play, but that is very limited. And also you've got to think about life beyond football and the impact that they can have beyond not just their playing career but later in life. So some fantastic discussions. I'm conscious of time. I think we have about 9 minutes left, and I should have said to everyone, unfortunately we lost Assia because there are some very bad thunderstorms in Los Angeles where she lives. So very, very sad to have lost her, but some great input from Jacques-Henri and Jürgen. Thank you. So just thinking about life beyond COVID, how do you imagine the future bouncing beyond the current crisis, and how will it ideally look? Do you want to go first, Jacques-Henri?
Thank you for that, Sharon. Well, there's one thing that pops up instantly, and we haven't talked about it yet. This is the role of the fans in the life of a football club. And certainly over these last 6 months, playing in empty stadium is a heartbreaker, is totally dysfunctional, is nowhere near what football is about. And maybe, when this time is over and fans are back in the stadium, there may be a way for clubs to connect the dots within their impact strategy and work on programs with the fans and fans groups to deliver impact and increase the performance of these initiatives, because as you know, impact has to be evaluated, outcomes have to be measured, results have to be measured, and doing that, linking such impact strategy between a club and its fans groups may be also a way to reconnect. By the way, in Marseille, this is certainly the case. You have a lot of fans groups who are pretty much engaged throughout the year in impact and community outreach and initiatives. Well, I think that may be another opportunity for us as clubs to team up and be collective in the way we design our impact strategy and make our fans a very important part of such strategy. So this is also something that we're going to do and try to build over the next month and couple of years.
Thank you, Jacques-Henri. Jürgen, thoughts from you?
Yeah, I think one thing I wanted to say is that obviously a good thing is that we're not starting from scratch. There is football obviously in many places playing its role when it comes to grassroots football. There are these foundations we were talking about, obviously working more on the periphery and not as impactful as they could be, not like unearthing the full potential of the club they're actually part of. There's the football like for good world, if you want, like NGOs that are using football as a tool to either increase or accelerate their impact. So there's what I want to say is that we're not starting from scratch, which is a good thing. Secondly, I think we're already experiencing this bouncing beyond mentality. Just if you listen to our conversation today, probably a year ago, 2 years ago, 5 years ago, it would have been close to impossible to have that conversation, like openly and honestly, like with football in this case with Jacques-Henri actually questioning itself and challenging itself in terms of what's actually our role towards society and environment, and making itself part of the rest of the world, if you want, where there is this shift also from a shareholder to a stakeholder economy, where there is like actually purpose economy becoming a word, and contribution starts to become part of what we understand as success. So versus just pure accumulation, and I think if we are led by this idea of moving impact from a periphery, from a silo, as Jacques-Henri called it, to actually factoring it into the how the industry is actually set up, making it part of the business model. I think it's not just the right thing to do, but it's actually smart, and it's not the notion of giving something away. It's actually an investment, not just in the future of our planet and the global society, but actually of the club or even the individual player, him and herself.
I think you're absolutely right, Jürgen, and you also referenced it earlier about how it should be part of the DNA, not something on the side around the sort of, the approach to charitable activities that football clubs participate in. And just very briefly, because we only have a couple of minutes left, but Jacques-Henri, you referenced the importance of fans. And, we talked about the 4 billion fans that football has. How can we're doing things individually, we're doing things in clubs. How can you unite football across the world to have that impact? What, is there just a couple of brief things on what we could do to unite people from football around all of the common causes we think are important? Jacques-Henri.
Well, this is a big ambition, Sharon. But what we're trying to do here is to identify the clubs which share the same kind of values or identity, part of our DNAs, and there are maybe Boca in Argentina, maybe other clubs, and I won't quote them because otherwise I'll get into trouble. But certainly, building a network of clubs which share the same kind of identity and values could be the start of a platform through which we could, develop joint projects around impact. So this is another thing we're working on right now, and hopefully, some more to come in 2021 on that.
Fantastic, thank you. Jürgen, a couple of last comments from you. We've lost your sound.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm back?
Yes.
No, what we want to offer with Common Goal and the 1% is a framework to actually do that, and for everybody to come together. Just make the notion of 1%, which just symbolizes that everybody can do it, that we need everybody actually to do it in order to achieve what we collectively want to achieve, and just make it your own. Just use it as a reference on how you can potentially embed what we're talking about in terms of purpose and your contribution to people and planet at the core of what you are about as an institution, as an organization, as an individual. This is what we believe in.
That's absolutely fantastic. Enormous thank you to you, Jacques-Henri and Jürgen. Some amazing insights, a really great, rich discussion, and also real inspiration about how football is transforming and can continue to transform and have an amazing impact on the world and be a force for good. So thank you. It's been great to join you.
Sharon, thank you very much indeed. Yes, I absolutely echo those sentiments. Great to hear from both Jacques-Henri and Jürgen. And just to briefly up some, I mean, I'm going to start off with the problem here and the two of the kind of headline comments here, especially from Jacques-Henri, who spoke very, very boldly about this, saying football doesn't have a good image and we need to improve it, and it should be very high on our agenda. And also Jürgen saying that football has been living in a bubble, didn't have to question itself very much until now, but it's our opportunity of our lifetime that football cannot be an exception. It needs to change, needs to evolve, and it's great that it's replicated and it's felt at club and at player level. So with Jacques-Henri saying that winning is critical, but so is everything else, and the impact and financial performance can be and should be interconnected rather than siloed away. It shouldn't just be the responsibility of a club's foundation to deal with this. And also some really nice thoughts from Jürgen about it's not just the right thing, but the smart thing to do. And I think that's something for us to all think about. It's not just about it being a CSR objective, but actually could we attract more fans because we are more purpose driven, and actually a new breed of fans questioning, demanding, who hold clubs and players to account. could they actually come to you because you put impact at the centre of what you do? Jacques-Henri saying that clubs should work with the fans to link the strategy between club and fans. And yes, maybe if we all make these kind of efforts, and I get the sense that this is very doable. I'm not saying that it's easy, but it's certainly not a pipe dream. And from what these guys have been saying, and I'm sure that Assia would have concurred with many of these points. And as Sharon mentioned, it was a shame that we couldn't re-establish connection with Assia in Los Angeles because of the weather problems she's had out there. That actually this is something that can become very, very possible and should be in the not too distant future. And the purpose economy can indeed be something that clubs are centralised around, that leagues are centralised around going forward. What an excellent start to day one of this second edition of WFS Live. Many thanks to Sharon, to Jacques-Henri and to Jürgen. And we'll be back very, very shortly indeed with our second panel as we continue. And it's based on gender equality in sport. Next milestone 2023, growing the game. We'll see you in a couple of ticks.